Will the House please come to order and members kindly take their seats? We are coming back from recess and it is currently 4:42 p.m. on March 30th. We are still taking votes on House Bill 486, which is an act relating to school construction. Prior to third reading, the member from Swanton offers an amendment to the bill that the first assistant clerk emailed to members at 3:46 p.m. This amendment is also posted on the House Overview webpage. Member from Swanton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The floor amendment offered to 486 does nothing to slow down the testing. It does nothing to stop or slow down or amend or change in any way the plan that's outlined in the bill. The amendment does nothing to hurt Burlington, the Burlington School, or the Burlington School District. This amendment is not in any way able to or used to be involved in any lawsuit to do with an employee, a person, or anyone potentially injured by PCBs or in any way impacted. Any unions, any groups, any people, any Vermonters, any Burlingtonians that were involved in any lawsuits regarding this PCBs would have no relevance to this amendment. This amendment is proposed specifically so that when we, through our generosity as Vermonters and responding to the huge plight, the difficult plight of Burlington, this body is responding and giving Burlington a grant to pay for remediation and removal of their difficult high school situation. If the Burlington High School District is able to win any lawsuit specific to the remediation of that facility and the removal and destruction of that facility, they would be required to send back this money that's up to $16 million to the taxpayers of Vermont. So all of the taxpayers of Vermont recognize through passing this bill that the people of Burlington have gone through a horrible situation and still are, and we're here to help. And if they are able to win the lawsuit against Monsanto, all I'm asking is that we protect those same taxpayers that we represent by then having just the amount awarded for remediation and just the amount for the cost to remove that building be sent back to the taxpayers into the education fund for construction, and then this body decide what to do with that money then. We want to help Burlington. We want to help Vermonters. And when evil forces make bad things happen to Vermonters, especially in Burlington, we're there to help. And when those people are held accountable and Burlington gets that money back, that money comes back to the taxpayers of every small town, every large town, and each city that faces with a problem. But specifically in this case, the bill carves out Burlington, and all I want to do is help them and then protect the taxpayers of the rest of the state that are very generously and responding in the way that Vermonters do, helping the citizens of Burlington. It only, and specifically, and council testified to this in committee, is only going to come back if the award is specific to the district and specific to remediation and removal of that high school and help the people of Burlington move forward. If we do not, per the testimony of Legislative Council, if we do not put any stipulations or strings, or we do not say that we want that remediation back should they receive it, there is no way to claw it back. They could then win the lawsuit, get awarded for that remediation and hopefully lots of other things, and then they would be able to keep that money. They can't have both. If I total my car, I either get my insurance money or I keep the car. The insurance company takes the car. That's all I'm saying. I want to help the citizens of Burlington, and clearly by the support of this bill, everybody does. And then I want to protect the taxpayers of Vermont. If should they be able to win the lawsuit, Burlington will just pay back the money that we are very generously helping them right now. And I thank the committees and all the body for the amount of time that it took. They gave it very, very serious consideration and raised a number of points about how things should be looked at. And it was very clear that they are all very concerned about the taxpayers of Vermont and the citizens of Burlington that have gone through a difficult situation. And it's important for us to help both of them. Madam Speaker, thank you very much.
Member from Williston.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. We enjoyed having the House Committee on Ways and Means in the room with the Education Committee in order to have a really robust discussion about an excellent point that the member from Swanton has raised, and an important construct in terms of liability, but a really complex legal construct that it's very challenging for us to arrive at a clear policy and understand all the implications of that in what we can do in an ad hoc meeting to listen to an amendment. We certainly want the companies who have brought on the toxins that we are now suffering from to be held liable, and we certainly hope that lawsuits are successful, and there may be many more lawsuits, which is another challenge of the construct of this amendment, is that we can't get into all the ifs of other potential lawsuits. In fact, under this section of the bill, there will be grants to other schools. They're not specifically named here, but we can go through documentation from ANR or AOE to find them, who have already found levels that have to be acted on. And so this part of the grant money under Section 2C of this bill is to help them with those costs. So there are other schools here that would also be impacted that may go forward and sue as well, and our state may sue as well. There's a lot of discussion here that needs to happen at many legal levels. So based on the challenges there of the legal construct that we were trying to wrestle with in a short amount of time, your House Committee on Education found the amendment unfavorable and hopes that you will join us in voting against the amendment.
And now for the committee.
Sorry, the vote count. In your House Education Committee, it was a straw poll of 8-3-1 to find the amendment unfavorable.
And now for the Committee on Ways and Means, member from Brattleboro.
Thank you. The Committee on Ways and Means appreciated the hospitality of the Education Committee and hope the Speaker and the body appreciate the time we saved by having a joint hearing on this matter, and also appreciate the really important issue that the member from Swanton brought to us. As the member from Williston said, this is an incredibly complex legal issue. The relationships between the education fund, statewide lawsuits, school district level lawsuits, and the implications for that with a problem that we are at this point not entirely sure of the scale of, but we know even within this underlying bill applies to more than just Burlington. We would like more time, and given the unfortunately slow pace of justice, we are fortunate that we have time to continue figuring out this issue in a considered way with deep research from our legislative council and our joint fiscal office to fully understand the implications of lawsuits towards our and the overall opportunities for our education fund. And so on a vote of 6-5-1, we found this amendment unfavorable. I'd also like to offer, as part of that report, some clarifications. We heard and voted favorably on our yield bill well, actually, I have no idea how long ago that was, Madam Speaker, but it feels like moments. And I appreciate the strong show of support from the body and the lack of debate from the body on that. I do genuinely appreciate that. But I want to offer some clarifications on how our education fund works. And that it is that essentially the yield is how we create and put revenues into our statewide education fund that represents the spending and the taxing capacity of every single district in the state. So the taxes of Burlington taxpayers and the taxes of Vermonters are the same pool of money. It is not separate. It is not a loan from one to another. We are all in the same pool of the education fund. And so if Burlington does receive offsetting revenue,
Oh, member from Barry. Can I see you up at the podium, please? Thank you. Will the House please come to order? Member from Barrytown? Member from Barrytown? I find your point of order not well taken. The member is talking about how the money works together in this instant related to the education fund and what the member is offering here. So I find your point of order not well taken. Member from Brattleboro, the floor is yours.
so the point that I am trying to make here is that there is no difference between Burlington taxpayers and Vermont taxpayers. Burlington taxpayers are Vermont taxpayers writ large, but quite specifically with the case of the education fund. And so if Burlington receives revenue from an outside source, whether that be Burlington School District, whether that be a lawsuit or money that suddenly falls from the sky and is collected by the shell of the Burlington School building, that money would be considered offsetting revenue towards the Burlington school budget, and so would lower the total amount of money that the Burlington School District would need to actually receive from the education fund. And so I say that again because this is one of the incredible gifts that we have here in Vermont towards educational equity, is that we are really put in a position every year, particularly when we vote on the yield bill, but in smaller ways when in each of our communities we vote on our school budgets, in this body when we discuss this bill, to remember that all of our children's education are inextricably linked to each other, and we have mechanisms to really reinforce that. And so this is not a loan from the taxpayers or a gift from the taxpayers of Vermont to Burlington School District. This is a responsibility that we all hold towards each school district. And I'm really grateful that the underlying bill is paying out for PCB grants to more than just Burlington School District, but to all of the districts that have so far identified as being in need of PCB remediation. Thank you. And so I encourage you to vote no on the amendment.
The question is, shall the bill be amended as offered by the member from Swanton? Are you ready for the question? If so, all the member from Swanton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I really want to thank the committees and the chairs for their amount of time that we spent on it and the body that we spent on it. I just want to make it clear that if there's a concern with the construct of the amendment is only constructed on the bill. Secondly, all Vermonters have enough trouble understanding education funding as it is. This is a specific and simple amount of money for a specific purpose. And if any recovery would be unknown, whether covered by any particular statute, and all I want is to protect Vermont, that the money specifically comes back, and we are all helping Burlington. We are all helping Burlington. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is, shall the bill be amended as offered by the member from Swanton? Member from St. Albans Town.
Madam Speaker, I ask when this vote is taken is done by roll.
The member from St. Albans Town requests that when the vote is taken, it be taken by roll. Is the member sustained? The member is sustained. When the vote is taken, it will be taken by roll. Will the House please come to order? The question is, shall the bill be amended as offered by the member from Swanton? Are you ready for the question? If so, the clerk shall commence to call the roll.
Andrews of Westford.
2 minutes. Will the House please come to order and members kindly take their seats? I would like to remind members that we are in the middle of a roll call vote. Members and guests are prohibited from using computers, phones, or any type of an electronic device. Please refrain from the passing of notes and conversation during a roll call. When the clerk calls your name, please answer in a loud and clear voice so the clerk can accurately record your vote. The question is, shall the bill be amended as offered by the member from Swanton? Will the clerk please continue to call the roll?
Andriano of Orwell. Anthony of Berry City. Harrison of Weathersfield. Arsenault of Williston. Austin of Colchester. Bartholomew of Heartland. Bartley of Fairfax. Beck of St. Johnsbury. Rebecca of Winooski. Byrong of Virgins. Black of Essex. Bloomley of Burlington. Mongarts of Manchester. Boslin of Westminster. Boyden of Cambridge. Brady of Williston. Brannigan of Georgia. Brennan of Colchester. Brown of Richmond. Brownell of Pownell. Brumstead of Shelburne. Burdett, West Rutland. Burke of Brattleboro. Burrows of West Windsor. Buss of Woodstock. Campbell of St. Johnsbury. Canfield of Fairhaven. Carpenter of Hyde Park. Carroll of Bennington. Casey of Montpelier. Chapin of East Montpelier. Chase of Chester. Chase of Colchester. Chestnut Tandreman of Middletown Springs. Christie of Hartford. I'm sorry, Christie of Hartford. Thanks. Gina of Burlington. Clifford of Rutland City. Coffey of Guilford. Cole of Hartford. Conlon of Cornwall. Corcoran of Bennington. Cordes of Lincoln. DeMar of Enosburg. Demro of Corinth. Dickinson of St. Albans Town. Dodge of Essex. Dolan of Essex Junction. Dolan of Waitsfield. Donahue of Northfield. Durfee of Shaftesbury. Elder of Starksboro. Emmons of Springfield. Farley's Rubio Barnett. Galfetti of Berrytown. Garifano of Essex. Goldman of Rockingham. Ghostland of Northfield. Graham of Williamstown. Granning of Jericho. Gregoire of Fairfield. Hango of Berkshire. Harrison of Chittenden. Hedrick of Burlington. Higley of Lowell. Holcomb of Norwich. Hooper of Randolph. Hooper of Burlington. Houghton of Essex Junction. Howard of Rutland City. Hyman of South Burlington. James of Manchester. Jerome of Brandon. Kornheiser of Brattleboro. Krasnow of South Burlington. Labor of Morgan. LaBounty of Linden. Lally of Shelburne. Lalone of South Burlington. Lamont of Morristown. Lanford of Virgins. LaRush of Franklin. LaRush of Franklin. Thank you. Levitt of Grand Isle. Lipsky of Stowe. Logan of Burlington. Long of Newfane. McGuire of Rutland City. Marcotte of Coventry. Maslin of Thetford. Matos of Milton. McCann of Montpelier. McCarthy of St. Albans City. McCoy of Pulteney. McFawn of Berrytown. McGill of Bridport. Mahaly of Calais. Minier of South Burlington. Morgan of Milton. Morris of Springfield. Morrissey of Bennington. Mrowicki of Putney. Mulvaney Stanek of Burlington. Nicole of Ludlow. Knott of Rutland City. Noyes of Wolcott. Nugent of South Burlington. O'Brien of Tunbridge. Odie of Burlington. Oliver of Sheldon. Page of Newport City. Payala of Londonderry. Parsons of Newberry. Pat of Worcester. Pearl of Danville. Peterson of Clarendon. Pouch of Heinsberg. Priestley of Bradford. Rachelson of Burlington. Rice of Dorset. Roberts of Halifax. Samus of Castleton. Sackwitz of Randolph. Shy of Middlebury. Shaw of Pittsford. Sheldon of Middlebury. Sibilia of Dover. Sims of Craftsbury. Small of Winooski. Smith of Derby. Squirrel of Underhill. Stebbins of Burlington. Stevens of Waterbury. Stone of Burlington. Supernaut of Barnard. Taylor of Milton. Taylor of Colchester. Templeman of Brownington. Tolino of Brattleboro. Toof of St. Albans Town. Torrey of Moortown. Troiano of Stannard. Walker of Swanton. Waters Evans of Charlotte. White of Bethel. Whitman of Bennington. Williams of Berry City. Williams of Granby. Wilson of Linden. Wood of Waterbury. Andriano of Orwell. Brownell of Pownell. LaBounty of Linden. Lamont of Morristown. Morgan of Milton. Knott of Rutland City. Nugent of South Burlington. Odie of Burlington. Parsons of Newberry. Pearl of Danville. And Wilson of Linden.
Member from Putney.
May I explain my vote, Madam Speaker?
You may.
Madam Speaker, my vote is to support the long work of the committee and the committee process. My vote also affirms something I learned early in my time here in the legislature, that floor amendments leave no time for that process. And a good idea deserves good process. And a good idea is a good idea last week and next week. And if this is a good idea, there's still time in the future for it.
Members, please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yes, 41. Those voting no, 98. The nays have it, and you have declined to amend the bill. Please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H 486, an act relating to school construction.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed the bill. Members, we will now turn to House Bill 493, which is an act relating to capital construction and state bonding. The bill was introduced by the Committee on Corrections and Institutions. The member from Springfield, Representative Emmons, will speak for the committee. Carrying an appropriation, the bill was then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which recommends that the bill ought to pass. The member from Chittenden, Representative Harrison, will speak for the committee. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 493, an act relating to capital construction and state bonding.
Member from Springfield.
Madam Speaker, today, finally, we bring before you our capital budget for the next 2 years. We do a 2-year budget, not a 1-year budget. But before I start, I would like to thank all of my committee members for tackling this piece of legislation. This was new to many members. We came together as a committee. We all learned how complicated putting together a money budget is, and I appreciate each and every member's work. And it is reflected in our work, and some members will be reporting the capital budget. But let me first of all give you all a very, very brief layout. In our 2-year budget, we are bonding and have a bonding capacity of about $122 million. We are also using general fund dollars to the tune of about $49 million, which brings us a total of $171 million 2-year capital budget. Many of you may think this is just bricks and mortar. It's just buildings. But I can assure you that these dollars go right back into our communities. They go back into our communities via helping our towns with water and wastewater projects. They go back to our communities in providing affordable housing through Vermont Housing Conservation Board, as well as conservation projects. We also are putting money towards our farmers for water quality issues and crop management. And not only are we supporting certain sectors of our state in economic development with these dollars going back, but we are also bringing dollars into our workforce, be it our contractors, our architects, and our trades folks. This is an economic development bill The capital bill puts money right back into Vermont. So it's much more than bricks and mortar. So, Madam Speaker, the bill is a committee bill. You can find this on the bill search for 493. And yesterday we went through the spreadsheet. And if you want to access the spreadsheet electronically, go to House Corrections and Institutions Committee webpage. And today it is posted in today's date. And the spreadsheet is laid out. In the green is what the governor recommended. In the blue is what the House committee did. And in the gold is the difference from the governor. The first 3 pages deal with bonded dollars, and the last page deals with the general fund. In the general fund piece, we do list all the projects that we have authorized, but we do not put in the spending authority for that. That will be in the appropriations bill that we do later on this afternoon. So, Madam Speaker, I would now like to yield to the member from Wethersfield to begin us on section 2 of the bill.
The member from Springfield yields to the member from Wethersfield.
Madam Speaker, I'll be reporting on section 2 of the bill. Section 2 of the bill is primarily, let's take care of the buildings that we own section. As the chair indicated, there's monies from 2024 and 2025. The monies from anything in subsection B is from 24 money. The subsection C is 25 money. Many of the categories are repeated in subsection C, and I'll only flag the ones that are redundant in section C. Line 1 is statewide major maintenance. It's a large part of the monies in section 2. The lump gives the BGS the ability to deal with unforeseen and possible emergency events. It also gives BGS flexibility to complete smaller projects, typically under $1 million. Line 2, physical security enhancements provide funding to assure that all state properties are safe for the public and staff. Line 3, planning and reuse, again, it gives BGS the ability to deal with unforeseen and smaller projects. Line 4 is a roof projects. You can also find roof projects in line 6, 7, and 14 in both subsections B and C. Line 5 is the Bennington Battle Monument fencing. It's to put up fencing for public safety and possible further maintenance work in the future. Line 8 is the decommissioning of a site and restoration of a facility in Middlesex. Line 9 is ongoing work to repair wearing, finishes, and keeping the State House historically correct. Line 10 is the State House HVAC, continuing funding for replacing the aging HVAC system, some of which was funded in the previous session. Also associated with subsection D is D1 and equipment needed. It's listed on D1 on line 1 and with equipment needed to control humidity to prevent mold issues that we've seen in the past. Line 11 will move legislative IT to 133 State Street to a more secure and controlled environment and space. Line 12 is a State House expansion. As we speak, there is currently an architectural firm has been commissioned with existing money to start a study of the State House for possible expansion. Their report is due back on June 23rd with a schematic design to be completed by November of 23. Section 29 creates a committee to review the architect's work and select a design using criteria as listed on page 38, B, lines 1 through 4. Line 13 is the Newport Courthouse replacement, planning and design. Also monies to pay are listed on page 25, section 17D8. It also includes the monies for land acquisition. Line 15 is the Northeast Correctional Facility, which is next in line for ongoing upgrades to door control and door repairs. Line 16 is renovations to the White River Courthouse and for improvement for pedestrian traffic flow as it relates to security for the public and staff. Line 17 is to adhere to the state's 3-acre rule for stormwater waste runoff and includes planning as well as construction. Line 18 lists R22 refrigerant, which is no longer made. We have many systems that are using R22. It's an attempt to recapture the gas and put it to use and replace some of the existing units that are reaching the end of their life. Line 19 is Art in the State Building, which provides funding for H102, which we passed on the 28th of March. At this time, I'd like to yield to the member from Halifax.
The member from Weathersfield yields to the member from Halifax.
Madam Speaker, I turn to section 3 of the bill, Human Services. It's on page 5 for those following along, lines 26 through 30 of your spreadsheets. And I want to highlight one project here at the moment, which is an investment we're making in HVAC upgrades in our correctional facilities. We currently have 2 of our 6 facilities are air-conditioned facility-wide. That leaves the other 4 with spotty to no air conditioning. And the committee, we started work on this project in the previous capital bill. The committee felt strongly about committing more money to planning and getting money into construction to alleviate heat-related stress for staff and residents at facilities if possible, as well as looking at facility-wide upgrades. We have a couple more projects I want to talk about, and I'm going to do so in the context of the policy section of the bill, section 23. This is where we are putting new language into Title 29 to put in statute design principles for all correctional facilities, for all projects moving forward. That includes women's facilities, that includes major maintenance, such as you just heard about from the member from Weathersfield, door controls. Any future project will be governed by these design principles. That is, the evidence-based design principles for wellness environments are incorporated into the design and planning process of projects. In plain language, we want to humanize the residential and working conditions in our correctional facilities. Now, with that in mind, I turn to 2 specific projects that we also have policy language for in section 24 and section 25 and 26. With Northwest State Correctional Facility, we're moving into planning, design, and we're going to try to move into construction as rapidly as possible with an expansion of the booking capacity at Northwest. Now, when the women's facility was moved to Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility, that facility had been used for booking for the entire Chittenden region. Booking then moved up to Northwest, a facility that was designed to handle about 600 folks in and out per year is now handling 8,000 to 10,000 detainees moving in and out of the system for booking and for getting to court dates. The working conditions are stretched to the max, and we are putting in dollars in the capital bill to work on adding booking space, renovations to HVAC, and other upgrades at Newport. The state has also been moving since 2018 to replace the Women's Correctional and Reentry Facility, Chittenden. So we're putting in funding to keep moving that forward. And with that funding, we're adding some policy language, including focusing on a site location proposal, asking the Department of Buildings and General Services to work with, of course, the Department of Corrections and come back to House Corrections and Senate institutions by January 2024 with a site selection proposal, with a start of looking at state own lands, but also looking, if we have to, on the market for a site probably of 20 to 25 acres, both potentially housing a single facility in a campus-style approach or potentially different locations. And we're going to receive monthly status reports on that project from Buildings and General Services. As well, it is the intent in this language that the design of any women's replacement facility use these evidence-based principles for wellness environments. Furthermore, we're stating our long-term goal that we have a vision for justice and all individuals that includes their reentry into the community through a system of supports grounded in restorative justice principles. And now I yield to the member from Barrytown.
The member from Halifax yields to the member from Barrytown.
All right, Madam Speaker, turning to Section 4, Commerce and Community Development, there are 4 subsections. We have historically funded all of these programs that serve to preserve our statewide historic sites. Things like roadside historic markers. I'm sure you're all familiar with these green cast iron signs scattered throughout the state. The major maintenance portion goes to the 81 historic sites throughout the state, sites like the Justin Morrill Homestead. The Vermont Underwater Preserves monies go to maintain navigational buoys and underwater signage at dive sites on Lake Champlain that the state controls. And finally, the unmarked burial sites money go to protecting sites where unmarked burials are discovered. These projects have been funded year to year by the state, and we are continuing to fund them at the same level. Moving on to Section 5, Building Communities Grants. These grants are available to municipalities and nonprofits for projects that are already in progress. They offer a 50-50 match up to $25,000. These grants cover a range of activities, and the application process is very simple. Historic preservation grants can go to projects like the preservation of a library or town hall. Historic barns and agriculture grants are available to private citizens and go towards the preservation of historical agricultural buildings. Cultural facility grants are administered by the State of Vermont Arts Council and are awarded on a need-based model. Recreation facilities grants are available to municipalities and nonprofits to develop recreational opportunities in our communities. And human services grants are associated with major maintenance of human service-related facilities, for instance, a community health center. Human services and educational grants are intended for the renovation and development of facilities such as libraries that serve the community. And regional economic development grant projects assist communities in creating job opportunities in Vermont. Finally, the competitive grants for agricultural fairs capital projects are available to fairs for making upgrades to the electric, water, sewer, and other infrastructure at the fair site. Moving on to Section 6. This fund is available to schools for projects like replacing a boiler that has failed, and it is only for emergency events. And finally, Section 7. This allocation is for major maintenance projects at the University of Vermont and is in line with the governor's recommendation and previous year's funding. And with that, Madam Speaker, I will yield to the member from Franklin.
The member from Barrytown yields to the member from Franklin.
Madam Speaker, I will be presenting sections 8 and 9, lines 64 through 85, which are Agency of Natural Resources sections, including clean water. These will be all bonded dollars that we're discussing here. You later will hear testimony from the member from Montpelier concerning general fund appropriations that are related to some of these line items. So you'll hear the same names when you hear from him. Section 8, Agency of Natural Resources, line 65, this money going to DEC. This provides the 20% state match to federal EPA money for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. This fund provides low-interest loans, enabling public water systems improvements to meet the drinking water standards. Line 66, again to DEC. This will be used to implement risk reduction measures for Agency of Natural Resources owned dams to ensure that risks posed by these dams are minimized. Line 67, this goes to Forest Parks and Recreation. These funds will be used for a variety of tasks, including emergency sewage system repairs, improvements to state park roads, renovation and improvements to state park structures and facilities, as well as to treat 119 acres of the impervious surfaces that must meet the 3-acre stormwater rules threshold for Lake Champlain and Lake Memphremagog basins in order for us to comply by 2026. Line 68, again, Forest Parks and Recreation. These funds will be used to improve the heavily used recreational trail system and network on agency lands, trailhead structures, stream crossings, to rehabilitate remote historic structures, and to implement best management practices on ANR's roads and trails to reduce nutrient and sediment pollution to Vermont waters. Line number 69, Fish and Wildlife money in this case. These funds will be used to maintain and improve infrastructure on wildlife management areas, to provide safe and reliable access for improving roads, for parking, for educational buildings, for boat ramps, fishing platforms, and fish hatchery improvements, along with associated infrastructure. It will also be used to improve compliance with the American for Disabilities Act. Line 70 is Forest Parks and Forest Parks and Recreation. These funds will be used to make improvements to road systems and infrastructure on Forest and Parks property. Moving to section 9, which is clean water. The Agency of Agriculture who will receive this, line 76. This line item appears as recommended by the Vermont Clean Water Board. The Agency of Agriculture uses this money to provide grants and contracts pursuant to 6 VSA Chapter 4900 for capital expenditures to enable best management practices on farms in Vermont. These BMPs are implemented to protect water quality and include manure storage, stormwater runoff collection, and storage of silage leachate, as well as installation of on-farm structures to mitigate water quality issues. Line 78 goes to ANR. This money provides the 20% match to leverage federal funds providing low-interest loans to municipalities for stormwater, wastewater, and natural resource projects. These funds are intended to help us achieve the TMDL, which is the total maximum daily load targets for the Lake Champlain and Memphremagog basins. Line 80 also goes to ANR. These funds will be used for implementation of best management practices on ANR's road. I think we should have some smaller words. ANR's roads and trail systems to reduce nutrient and sediment pollution entering Vermont waters to meet water quality targets. Line 82 goes to the Vermont Housing Conservation Board, and these funds will be used to provide grants to farmers for water quality related capital improvements, manure management projects, farm equipment, and pasture management. This money will help with project components that other state and federal grant programs cannot cover. In cases of significant hardship, this money helps meet cost share requirements on priority AAFM best management practices and natural resource conservation service projects. VHCB also on line 83. These funds provide Vermont Housing and Conservation Board's core funding. These funds are allocated by way of grants to eligible applicants, including land trusts, conservation nonprofit organizations, towns, and state agencies for conservation and water-related easement provisions to conserve riparian buffers and wetland protection zones. Line 84 is the clean water funding. This is the clean water funding request of $10 million, and this will be in fiscal year 2025. These funds are recommended by the Vermont's Clean Water Board and provide for municipal pollution control grants authorized under Title 10, Chapter 55, to assist Vermont municipalities to fund combined sewer overflow abatement, dry weather flow treatment, and sludge and septic treatment facilities. These grants supplement loans that are funded through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. Municipalities need to make significant investments to meet EPA total maximum daily load limits for phosphorus in Lake Champlain and as per the 2015 Vermont Clean Water Act 64. Madam Speaker, I now yield to the member from Burlington.
The member from Franklin yields to the member from Burlington.
Madam Speaker, we are already in the home stretch. I am the penultimate reporter for H493. I will be reporting on sections 10 through 15 on your spreadsheet, as well as sections 19 through 21 in the policy section of H493 that discusses stipulations on the pending sales of state properties. So section 10 on your spreadsheet agrees with the governor's recommended allocations for maintenance, renovations, and ADA compliance at state armories. Section 11 allocates money to the Agency of Food and Markets for 2 projects. The first is for renovations of our state-owned building at the Eastern States Exposition Grounds in West Springfield, Mass. This is called the Big E. First time learning about it. I plan on going this fall if anyone wants a road trip. This building houses various Vermont businesses at the expo each year to showcase Vermont products. The building is in need of renovations. It's nearly 100 years old and will soon be part of the 100-year celebration of the Big E. The second is for the construction of a dedicated heat plant at the Vermont Agriculture and Environmental Laboratory that is currently relying on an inconsistent steam heat source that we purchased from the Vermont Technical College. Section 12 continues an annual appropriation to the Vermont Rural Fire Protection Dry Hydrant Program. We've increased the allocation slightly to help accommodate the rising costs of materials needed for upkeep and new construction of dry hydrants. Section 13 agrees with the governor's recommended allocations for the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board capital projects. Section 14 allocates funding for continued renovations at the Vermont Veterans Home, and I want to clarify the highlighted sections here. Those allocations are not actually an increase from the governor's recommend. In the next section, section 15, I'll talk briefly about the process we use to reclaim unused funds that have been allocated in the capital bills from previous years. In this case, we reclaimed those funds from some stalled projects at the Veterans Home. We simply kept those funds allotted to the Veterans Home, but we've added language in section 14C of the policy section of the committee bill that will require the Veterans Home to report back to our committee and the Senate Committee on Institutions by January 15th, 2024, just to make sure those projects keep moving. So section 15 identifies all of the other funds that have been reclaimed from past projects. We have a committee that reviews all previously allocated funds that have not yet been encumbered that are more than 3 years old. Sometimes this happens when a project is complete and there are small amounts of unused budget. Sometimes projects stall and sometimes projects just get canceled. Those previously allocated funds we determine should get reclaimed are all added to the bottom line and then added to the bonded amount that was initially calculated as our current capacity. And now I'll turn my attention away from the spreadsheet and discuss sections 19 through 21 of H493. So section 19 amends 29 VSA 166. Subsection B1 stipulates that the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services may sell real estate owned by the state only upon authorization by the General Assembly. H493 identifies 3 such instances for this biennium, and we've identified some stipulations for each in section 20. On page 29, subsection A authorizes BGS to sell the property located at 110 State Street. This building currently only houses 8 staff members that can be absorbed into other buildings. Subsection A stipulates that BGS shall first offer the city of Montpelier the right of first refusal, and that this first refusal right will terminate after 1 year. Subsection B authorizes BGS to sell a parcel of land adjacent to the state complex in Waterbury, but only to the city of Waterbury. Stipulations for this sale are identified on page 30 of H493 and are as follows. The Town of Waterbury Select Board must first take a formal action indicating the town's interest in purchasing the property. BGS will conduct a site survey of the property. BGS will first determine that no other state department or agency has a use for the property, and the deed will include a restriction limiting the use of the property for housing. If the town rejects these stipulations or fails to accept the offer, BGS shall require approval from the General Assembly to sell to another party. Finally, subsection C authorizes BGS to sell 108 Cherry Street in Burlington. City of Burlington is also given the right of first refusal that will expire in 1 year. H493 also stipulates that prior to the sale, BGS shall work with the City of Burlington to find another appropriate location in downtown Burlington to relocate the state employees currently housed at 108 Cherry who are actively providing client services. Madam Speaker, if I am the penultimate reporter, that means I am yielding to the ultimate reporter from Montpelier.
The member from Burlington yields to the member from Montpelier.
Madam Speaker, it's opening day and I'm batting cleanup. We're going to be talking cash in sections 17 and 18. These next two sections lay out which projects will be paid for through the Infrastructure Reserve Fund and with general fund cash. Why would we pay for these items with cash rather than through bonding? You think of it like your own household credit card. When you have the capacity to pay, you start paying it down. So it's a good policy long-term, and it's definitely appreciated by the rating agencies and Treasurer Pichek, I'm sure. So these sections authorize the projects themselves in the capital bill, but as the chair mentioned, you'll also see them appear in the appropriations bill because that's where the money's actually spent. So it's a bit of a different structure in previous years. So that brings us to section 17, the Infrastructure Reserve Fund. You'll see some duplication here from other sections which pay for construction costs, where in section 17, it's largely cash for planning. If you look at the bottom line, we didn't deviate much from the governor's recommend of 19.18 million. We shaved it down to 17.38 million. So if you go to section 164, this was already touched on, reuse planning and contingency. It's a bit of a flexible line item. We added 250,000 each year. State employees are telecommuting, offices are being moved. Again, it just gives a bit of flexibility to move offices for BGS there. 165, the Cherry Street parking garage repairs. We're seeing some really severe bond failure between the steel and concrete in this garage. Replacing concrete's desperately needed, and this money will bring us up to the construction phase there. 166, 120 State Street. That's a DMV building, looking at HVAC and interior renovations. It's a final phase of a project that's been going for a while there. Multi-year project to replace the HVAC system, patchwork as it is. Current system's 80 years old, so we really want to get that done. Section 167, Newport, the Northern State Correctional Facility. Again, already touched on, and this is planning money associated with replacing the boiler as outlined by my colleague. Section 168, the Pittsburgh Academy Administrative Buildings. This is the Criminal Justice Training Council. Current buildings are well past their service life. We need to replace wiring, boilers, steam radiators, and piping. So again, this will bring it up to the construction phase. Section 169, Northwest Booking Expansion, already covered by the member from Halifax, but this is the $600,000 we're using in cash to cover the planning phase. Section 170, the Women's Correctional Replacement. Again, mostly mentioned by the member from Halifax. We spent $1.5 million last year in planning. This is an additional $1.5 million of planning that's going to focus on site planning and identifying land options for whatever facility or facilities are there. Section 171, DCF short-term facility. This is planning money to consider how we're housing justice-involved youth following the closure of Woodside. So it's $1 million for planning there. Section 172, the Washington County Courthouse in Barry. Building's woefully inadequate as it is. What you have is perpetrators mixing with victims in hallways. We have a big backlog of cases in Washington County, so adding a third courtroom could really make a dent in that. And might have to ask the question, do we want to expand here or replace it completely? Section 173, State Police Special Teams, Facilities and Storage. This is the hazmat team and marine units, which are currently housed in AOT District 5 garage. They have over $5 million of assets there, and they're unprotected from like fire damage. So we want to remedy that. Section 174, the Rutland Field Station. These police barracks were due to be upgraded a while ago. We purchased land in Clarendon in 2013. Williston bumped it in line because the Williston station was in such poor condition, so we'll get this one back in the queue. Section 175, the Agriculture Environmental Lab, already mentioned, so I won't go into too much detail, but really want to get it running. This is the planning money, and the lab really needs to be able to control its own heat for consistency. Section 176, Vets Home renovation. These are 2 units in the Vets Home that haven't been updated since the 80s. The improvements will include increased PPE storage, HVAC, and plumbing. Section 177, the Newport Courthouse, again already listed. It's money to purchase a site to locate the new Newport Courthouse, which currently exists in 2 adjacent buildings up there. Section 178, the tunnel under the State House. This is planning money in 25 to patch up the tunnel that runs under the State House. It's currently leaking, which will result in frost heaves in the winter months. We run a lot of wiring and conduits through there, so that's important to patch up. Section 179, the stack area at 111 State Street, the Pavilion Building and Courts. It's going to replace the HVAC system and elevator, and this money will get them through the planning phase here. Moving on to Section 18. Again, this is general fund money, but it'll be included in the appropriations bill. The projects themselves are authorized here. And we do part ways from the governor, who proposed $62 million in cash here. We reduced it down to $32 million, and here are some of the highlights. Section 187, major maintenance. We already talked about it a bit, but in the recommended budget, BGS was getting $8 million over 2 years, which was $2 million more than in previous years. So we just brought it back in line with previous capital bills. Section 188, we agreed with the governor for electric vehicle charging stations, kept the $1 million in. This will probably add about 30 to 40 L2 new charging stations across the state at offices, which can be used both by state employees and the public. And BGS would charge for the charging at that. Section 189, the state colleges. This is an interesting one, I think. Governor recommended this in 4 different line items for $10 million total. What we did was we shaved $1 million off that and put all the line items together, which wouldn't lock them in. It would give them a bit of flexibility to use it across these line items, which include major maintenance, the transformation plan, which involves some wayfinding signs, renovations to Green Hall, and renovations to Vale Hall, which didn't look like it was up until 25 there. So flexibility, and we've got budget adjustment if they need more there. Section 190, this is a big one, state match for the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, Clean Water and Drinking State Revolving Funds. What the governor did here in his recommend was he wanted to bank $27 million to meet the state match. We went to JFO and we asked, what is the state match we'd actually need for FY 24 and 25? Because like we agree, we don't want to leave money on the table. And we were told $9.7 million would complete the match for FY 23, the current year, 24 and 25. So if you front load it, you're actually not getting that money any quicker. So what we decided to do was just match it for the next 2 years here. When we looked at that $27 million, we also looked that 2.8 of that had already been appropriated the previous fiscal year. So it was a bit of a double dip with the 27 million. We're definitely committed to funding it in future years, but towns need time to get their projects in place with bonding and planning. So that was a significant reduction right there. Section 191, the Waterbury Dam, agreed $4.5 million, and that is needed because the Army Corps of Engineers, who's going to do this work, requires that state match. Section 192, municipal pollution control grants. Again, part of our clean water program. We always fund this, but in this case, there's no federal match. It goes to CSO, phosphorus. The governor put in $10 million, but the Clean Water Fund Board actually only recommended $3.3 million for municipal grants. So we took that and we gave an additional $600,000, and again, can adjust in the budget adjustment. Section 193, maintenance facilities at Gifford Wood and Groton. These facilities are well past their life, which creates liability for all the park equipment there. Section 194, Fish and Wildlife major maintenance. It'd be upgrades to cabins and administrative buildings. Like we've done in other items, we consolidated these line items and cut back a bit just to give them flexibility. Finally, Section 195, the AOT garage up in St. Albans. It's a very good plan for the future, which would move the garage closer to the highway. They've purchased land, but they still need some time. They still have to upgrade water, sewer, and frankly, we generally don't fund AOT garages in the capital bill, so we chose not to fund this with the general fund money. So that concludes my report. The committee voted the capital construction bill out of committee 10-01, and we'd appreciate the body's support.
And now for the Committee on Appropriations, member from Springfield. Chittenden.
I thought I moved or something. Madam Speaker, we appreciated hearing about the bill from the chair of the House Corrections and Institutions, Legislative Council, and the Joint Fiscal Office. On a vote of 12-0-0, House Appropriation recommends passage of H493 as introduced. Thank you.
And now the member from Chittenden and others offers an amendment to the bill that is printed in today's calendar. Member from Chittenden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The amendment, which is on page 1528 of today's calendar, is co-sponsored by all members of the House Appropriations Committee. As will be referenced in H494, the budget bill, later this evening, hopefully, this amendment makes some technical changes to the language in H493 that works in conjunction with the amendment to be added to the budget. This amendment removes sections 17 and 18 of H493 and replaces it with a new section 17. The projects listed in this section are the same as in the original bill and which you have just heard about, in the same costs associated with each one. As this is a bit of a new construct with the capital bill, some of the projects, as you've heard, are being appropriated in the budget from the Capital Infrastructure Reserve Fund. This amendment authorizes these products as part of the capital bill, and when we get to the budget, the money will be appropriated for these projects. Legislative Council and the Joint Fiscal Office worked together to make sure we had the right language in each bill and to make sure that they worked just right together. A total of $39,385,000 will be authorized from the fund with this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member from Springfield.
Madam Speaker, your House Corrections on Institutions Committee did review this amendment, and we find this amendment to be favorable, and we supported this amendment on a vote of 10-0-1.
So the question is, shall the bill be amended as offered by the member from Chittenden and others? Are you ready for the question? Member from Pittsford.
Madam Speaker, may I ask the member from the Appropriations a quick question, clarifying?
The member from Chittenden is interrogated.
Madam Speaker, you gave me a total for your amendment, and I want to make sure I heard correctly. Could you give me that total again?
Madam Speaker, could you repeat that?
Madam Speaker, you want me to walk over and ask him? I've got it. Okay. So, Madam Speaker, in your amendment, you went through the various projects out of the cash fund. Can you give me that total again? I want to make sure I heard the correct number.
$385,000, no cents, will be authorized from the fund with this amendment.
Thank you, member, and thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is, shall the bill be amended as offered by the member from Chittenden and others? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have amended the bill. Now the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? Member from Pittsford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, may I inquire the presenter of the old Section 18 and new and amended Section 17?
The member from Montpelier is interrogated.
And a clarity question again, Madam Speaker. I believe, I think I heard you say, it may be mistakenly, in the original Section 18, that on line, let's see here, 190 and on 192, what fiscal years were those appropriations made for?
And Madam Speaker, the fiscal years would cover FY '24 and '25. Madam Speaker, I'm going to yield to the member from Springfield. Sorry.
The member from Montpelier yields to the member from Springfield.
Madam Speaker, could the member repeat the question so I'm clear? I think I understood it.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Be glad to. On line 190 and 192, those are the municipal control grants and the CWFR, Clean Water Drinking Fund. What fiscal years was that? Will the appropriation of that you have listed in the column, in the blue column, of 9.7 million for the first and 4 billion for the second, what fiscal years will those cover?
Madam Speaker, on lines 190, this is our $9.7 million match for FY24 and FY25. And it is all in line with just FY24 for that. In lines 192 for the municipal pollution grants, that $4 million is only for FY24. The FY25 for the municipal pollution grants is within our Clean Water Fund section of the bill. And if you go to that section, you will see a $10 million lump sum for FY25, but no projects are listed. What occurs in that world is we wait until December of this year for the recommendations from the Clean Water Fund Board that makes the recommendation for our capital budget. What project, what line items, what specific projects will be funded within that 10 million and at what level? Municipal pollution grants have been there in that clean water section since it was established, I believe, 5 years ago. A member from Pittsford was vice chair of corrections and institutions and was pretty instrumental in putting this all together back then. Just a reminder, member from Pittsford.
Thank you for the refreshing my memory, Madam Speaker. So I did hear clearly that the 9.7 million is for 2 fiscal years, 24 and 25.
Madam Speaker, that is correct.
Okay, and then the $4 million appropriation for the drinking water SRF is only for FY24, but you have that covered in another section of your bill with an appropriation for $10 million in FY25.
That is correct.
Thank you, and thank you for your clarification, member, and thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, member from Winooski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have a few questions about the Women's Correctional Facility, so I wonder if I can inquire from the member from Halifax.
The member from Halifax is interrogated.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. One thing I find really important in our work is to make sure that we're hearing from those who are most impacted. So I'm wondering if the committee took testimony from people with lived experience or from Vermonters who were formerly incarcerated when deciding to move forward with a replacement for the Women's Correctional Facility.
Madam Speaker, the legislature has been working with the Agency of Human Services, Department of Corrections, the Department of Buildings and General Services on this project since 2018 and earlier, and I've heard directly from individuals incarcerated and with incarcerated experience over that time. The committee built in some report backs in this bill, which we would, I think, be privileged and honored to continue to spend more time with this population. There's certainly a lot more also not, in addition to the witnesses that will be reflected in our committee agendas. There's a lot more that we can't stream and isn't on YouTube. Those includes visits by committee members to correctional facilities and other secure facilities, both in Vermont and in other neighboring states.
Thank you, member. To clarify, in the process of developing this plan, did committee members hear directly from folks with lived experience?
Madam Speaker, this House session so far has been a small segment of the development of this entire plan. I think I've spoken to the question.
Okay, I will take that as a no for this year. Did the committee explore any alternatives to incarceration when discussing the replacement of the Women's Correctional Facility?
Madam Speaker, the committee has taken a lot of testimony on the current population in the women's facility, as well as the much larger men's population. And we've taken testimony on a lot of initiatives that the legislature and Department of Corrections have worked on over the last decade, and including during and since COVID, have significantly reduced our incarcerated population. We've looked at the current incarcerated population and their needs. And we are currently continuing to consider all ideas that, including use of our Justice Reinvestment Project with a focus on restorative justice in communities. This is really an ongoing conversation that the committee is interested in having, at the same time understanding that it's critical to keep moving forward on this women's facility as it is a dire need, and the need we foresee continuing.
I thank the member. Madam Speaker, I appreciate the member's sentiments around moving forward with a correctional facility, especially knowing the state of the Women's Correctional Facility as it is. But I know that this is an opportunity for us to really explore the opportunities that are not prisons. We know that prisons do not increase safety in community, they do not reduce crime, but that alternatives are really focused on community care and bringing folks together and wrapping them in community. So I am disappointed to see that we're moving forward with a plan to establish a new women's facility instead of exploring what alternatives could really benefit public safety and the people of Vermont. I will be supporting this bill, but encourage the committee to truly look into alternatives that are not locking people away from those that are loved.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? Member from Clarendon.
Yes, Madam Speaker. I'd just like to thank the committee in one area here. Sections 14 and 15, it looks like the committee identified between 500,000 and 600,000 extra dollars to put to the Vermont Veterans Home. I think that's significant. I think it's important, and I don't think there's Vermonters more deserving of a great place to live than that. So thank you, committee.
The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have ordered third reading. Members, at this time, we are going to break for dinner. So we will break until 6:45. So the House